Welcome everyone. We are going to be talking about effects today. So recording effects, palettes, scenes, cues, all that kind of stuff, how to put them in there. With me, we have Paul, who is going to be monitoring Q&A, chat, all that good stuff. Do you have anything else, Paul, that you want to
No, just hi everyone. How's it going?
add? As per usual, please go. As per usual, please excuse any dogs barking, all that good stuff. I know I have two in my room that are pretty passed out right now, so hopefully they don't bark through all this. Great, then let's keep going, or let's dive right into starting with effects. For you guys that are new to effects and new to Hog, so effects are continuous movements that we can apply to parameters. So we could very easily apply like an intensity dim effect going on, and that kind of deal. That way the intensity just goes up and down, or we could even apply a effect to like pan and tilt, and that way the light just continuously moves. There are predefined effects. So there's two windows that are very important when you're dealing with effects. You have your effect engine and your effect directory. So your effect directory just holds your effect palettes, and then your effect engine is going to allow you to actually build your effects here. So you can start seeing what wave is applied. So that's kind of what the table is. So like if I wanted to select my solo spots, 100%. There we go, 1 through 9 at full. I can then tilt, I'm going to tilt them down a little bit so that we can see exactly what they're doing. And then we can apply just a circle effect. So I just used an effect in the effect directory to get an effect going on pan and tilt pretty quickly. And then you can go into the effect engine and start actually adjusting some of these parameters. So we could say the first column there is your table column, and that's going to be used to kind of describe what type of wave is being used. So you have sine waves, and you can always click and drag just like in any kind of cell that can be editable. You can click and drag on it and press set. And once you press set, that's going to open up that menu for you to change the value on. So the different values the different tables that can be applied are your sine wave, your tangents, and then you have like a step, which is what I would say a not smooth sine wave, so that you can start to get like a square effect if you wanted to. So instead of a circle, it'll start being a square if I was to apply that step. Then you can change your rate, size, offset, and we're going to get into a little bit more of what in-shot, bounce, direction, and sync do as well. But with that being said, instead of just applying like effects from the effect directory and getting things going that way, I kind of wanted to walk you guys through building a very simple intensity effect through the effect engine on these 1 through 9, on these Solo Spot 2000s real quick. So we're going to select our fixtures 1 through 9, and again at 100%. I'm going to try to use the keyboard as much as possible rather than bringing up the front panel. That way it's a little bit easier to see what's going on. So right now we don't have an intensity effect applied. As soon as you give some kind of value inside the programmer, we give you an off effect table. So right now that means there's no intensity currently happening. So I'm going to change this to a sine wave. So I'm going to double click, or you can click and press set, and then click on sine, and then enter. So now the fixtures get a default rate, a default size, all that kind of stuff. So right now we have a sine wave going, and if you look inside that visualizer, you'll actually see that the fixtures aren't actually going all the way off. That is because the effects are all done off a base value. So where the fixture was before you applied that effect. I'm going to change my view real quick on the screen here. And it's going to have a lot of programmers, but don't worry, I'm going to explain kind of what they are first. So on the far right, this is our standard, what we would see as a standard programmer. We have, it's just telling us our fixtures are at 100%, and then it does that little infinity sign. meaning that you have an effect going on. So once you have an effect going on, then this value here is your base value. So all the fixtures are currently at 100%, and we're applying that sine wave based off that 100% value. Then this programmer here, we can actually break out and start seeing what the effects are doing. So we have our sine wave table going on here, and you can change what that does is in this, the top of the programmer, we have these little tabs. Value, fade, you would start seeing delay, path, all these options to select. So if you open the programmer multiple times, you can actually change what you're looking at. So I have table selected here, and the next thing I wanted to talk about was the size. So the size, which is the second programmer, is how far above or below that base value we're going to go. So because it's set to 50%, how the effect is working is it's going to go 50% above that base value, and then the minimum of the effect is 50% below the base value. So we are in theory going from 150% to 0%, and that's why the lights aren't ever actually going out. So if we were to change that size to 100%, so we can just do it right here in this effect engine. We're going to change this to 100%. What we'll see is that the fixtures start going all the way down and then all the way up. So we'll see them get dimmed down, and then they're going to dim up. You might see that they get a little staggered there once they reach 100%, because what it's trying to do is go 100% below 100%, so to 0, and then 100% above 100%, so to 200%. So that's not really giving us a smooth effect at this point. If we wanted a very smooth on and off effect, we could change our base value. Instead of 100%, put it at 50%. So I'm going to change these guys to 50% by hitting @50 enter. And then we can change our size from 100% back to 50%. And what we should see now is that the fixtures are going to go all the way to 100% and then all the way back to 0%. And so now we get that very smooth on and off. The next programmer is kind of showing us our effect rate. So how fast or how slow the effect is going. The higher the number, the faster the effect. The lower the number, the lower the effect. The slower the effect. So right now, if we look at our encoder wheels, we have intensity, pan, tilt. If we go into the front panel, though, there is an effect button that we can press and start to get some of those effects onto, and start to get some of those parameters onto our encoder wheels to control. So the first one's going to be our effect rate. So we're going to go ahead and crank that up a little bit so that it'll start, going super fast. So we're going to slow that way down.
Hey, Megan.
Yeah.
Since we're dealing with a little bit of lag on the visualizer, might you be able to tilt the fixtures downstage a little bit? Maybe make some of them more visible?
Yes, I definitely can. Hopefully that's a little bit easier to see.
It does make it a little bit easier to see, but I think it's probably important for everyone listening in and kind of watching that, because of the nature of the WebEx and a little bit of the lag with the visualizer, some of the things that we're trying to show may not look perfect, like i.e. real world, or even if you're using a visualizer locally on your computer. Because what I'm seeing is a little bit of a lag for like the first 4 fixtures. So just kind of everyone a little bit of grain of salt, please.
Yeah, WebEx is not the best to be showing you exactly what's going on with some effects. I'll try to keep the rates a little bit lower. That way you don't see that much of a delay. But as Paul said, just bear with us. The internet is great for what it can do, but it does have some limitations as to seeing it either in the real world or in the visualizer. And what's kind of cool about what I'm showing you guys right now, if you're a little bit familiar with like plotting and pixel mapping, then if you plot out your fixtures, you can actually see the intensity effects also without having to have a visualizer hooked up. Because I know not everyone has the ability to have a visualizer connected. Yeah, so so I was just talking about rate. The lower the rate, the slower the effect's going to go. Higher the number, faster the effect's going to go. So the next thing that that's really important with effects is an offset. So the offset is going to be where on that effect cycle do these fixtures actually start. So right now, our effect offset is set to 0 degrees. We can see that in the effect engine itself here, where it says 0 degrees. And then we can also see it on the encoder wheel or inside the programmer up here where it says 0 degrees. It's important to note that each light has its own individual offset. So when we spin that third encoder wheel to change the offset, we're actually changing the offset on all the lights at the exact same time. So the lights are still doing the exact same thing. But if we were to fan out the offset, we could start getting the lights to chase one at a time. So I'm going to hold down fan and spin that third encoder wheel, and we'll start to see that the values of the offset fan across the fixtures, and then that the effect is now chasing each other. And remember, fanning is applied in selection order, so because I selected fixtures 1 through 9, that effect is going to go from house left to house right. And since there is a bit of delay, I'll let that sit for a little bit. So with effect offset, what the offset is doing is it's just spacing out the fixtures across that effect cycle. It's not necessarily doing it in an even way. So some of the fixtures might be at the end of the offset of the cycle, or might be at the beginning. So what we actually implemented a couple software versions ago is what's called effect spread. An effect spread is going to make that effect make that effect be fanned across that offset completely based on your fixture selection. So completely even. So I'm going to go back to 0 degrees offset. I'm also going to toggle my blind here just so that I can start the effect completely over. And then if we hit the effect button one more time, you'll see the effect offset on that, the effect spread on that first encoder wheel. So now I'm going to just spin my spread, and we'll start seeing the fixture's intensity get spread out across our fixture selection, that intensity effect. Once you're at 100% spread, all the fixtures are spaced evenly across that effect offset, across that effect cycle. And then a nifty trick that you can do with spread is if you want to, and since the effect is going from house left to house right, if you wanted to quickly change the direction, so go from house right to house left, you can hold down the minus key and spin that encoder wheel to the left, and now it'll go the opposite direction. And that's how that's how easy it is to start making an effect in the effect engine. Do you guys have any questions before we keep going to dive in a bit more about effects? Cool. Since I don't hear anything. Yeah.
No questions. Trevor's saying there are 2 distinct frames on the visualizer, stage left and stage right, are out of sync. I think that may just be the inherent nature of the lag with WebEx and utilizing the visualizer.
Okay. Because it looks smooth on my end through OBS, so I'm going to guess it's something with WebEx a little bit. Cool. Then we're going to keep going. So how do you stop an effect at this point? So one of the ways you can stop an effect is on the intensity where it says sign. You can just click there, hit set, and then choose off. So once you hit off and then enter, it'll actually kill the effect. Then you can always bring that back with on just bringing back you can start applying the effect right after that. You can also knock out an effect if it's in the programmer. So holding up backspace, hitting effect, and that'll knock out the effect also. That'll get rid of the information from the programmer. Just like you would intensity, position, color. If you wanted to get that information out of the programmer, you can hold down backspace, hit effect, and it'll knock out the effect information.
One of the things that I do, Megan, I'm just kind of looking at your outline here, and I was just gonna see, maybe you're going to talk about this and not later on, but as it relates to turning off effects, one of the things that Hog doesn't do, and I wish it did, and something that I go through and kind of create when I'm kind of setting up a show file, or I will create effect off palettes.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can definitely, so that is a useful tool, is making an effect off palette. So just selecting your fixtures, putting them in a parameter so that you can have off in there on any of the effect engines. And then you can hit record and press in the effect palette like you should. And then you can see that under the table and the effect editor, it is listed as off. So now you have your intensity set to off. I've done it on I like to do it on a per parameter basis, so I can easily kill like my intensity, my position, my color effects without killing all of my effects.
Yeah, so exactly. I do that as well. Basically, what I would do is I would select all of my fixtures. I would then hit touch. That basically makes all parameters active, and therefore giving an off table for all parameters. I would record that as an all effects off. So if at any point I wanted to just kill all effects, but then just as you say, I would then go through and I would usually create an effects, a color effects off, a position effects off that are more specific.
Yeah. Yeah, the effects off are great just so that it's super easy to apply. And then it can trump whatever's in playback. Like if you need to just stop something that's currently in playback also without releasing everything. With that being said, let's actually talk about recording more palettes then. That was actually a good segue, Paul. Thanks. I'll keep that so that's easy to do. So when we're recording, we can record palettes for effects so that we can have predefined. So we already know we have some at the top because those are predefined effects that are just given as soon as you patch fixtures inside of the show file. We can also record our own palettes. So if I wanted to get that spot 2000s again back into that intensity palette that I had. Intensity, sorry. I'm going to put them at 50% intensity. Great. So now we could record this as a palette, and I'll tilt them a bit down. There we go. So that's a little bit easier to see. So we can record this as a palette right now. So to do that, we're going to press the record button. And then we just tap where we want it to go in the effect engine. So now our fixtures, once we hit record, in the effect directory. Once we hit record, we have that new effect there. I'm going to name it real quick so that we know what we're dealing with. So now I can clear out my programmer, select those fixtures, and apply that effect. And so now those fixtures are applying the effect. Now you might notice we're not actually going all the way to 100%. And inside the programmer with the values, we don't actually have a intensity value. That is because when we just recorded into that effect directory, we did not get any of the intensity information, so those base values. So one of the key things when recording your effect palettes is to make sure that you are recording your base value in there. So right now, we didn't have any base values, so our fixtures aren't going all the way off, all the way on like they should be. So we can actually adjust that right now if we wanted to. We'll just click here, set 100, give it a base value of 100%. Our table's still there, or sorry, not 100%, 50%. There we go, 50%. Our base value is still there, and then because we're adding information into this palette, we want to make sure that we click this I button so that that intensity information is stored. So I'm going to hit update and it's going to close the window. And we can see we have intensity information also added in here because we have that I in that effect palette. So now I'm going to hit 1 through 9, enter, select that palette, and now that intensity effect is working as expected. So one of the key things to make sure of when you're recording your palettes is to make sure you're masking in those specific parameters. If you're not masking in those parameters, then you won't get your base values. That's also just as important like with your color palettes, because your color palettes are usually based on where your color mixing was before you applied the palette. So you always want to make sure you have those either hue and saturation or CMY values recorded in there. Now the palette, if you notice when we recorded as a per fixture palette. So you'll just want to make sure if you need this palette to apply to other fixtures, when you record, you want to make sure you're global and that you don't have any unique values in there. So that means that also includes your offset. So if I wanted to, I'm going to adjust this palette so that we can have an offset going. So our fixtures have an offset. So we're going to record this as palette number 33. When I hit record, we're also going to try to select global at this point. We're just going to see how it won't necessarily work. Intensity effects, and then we're going to record that. So because they each have a unique offset, when I open that palette, we still got a per fixture palette. So if you're trying to record global effects, then that is the case when you need to make sure that there are no unique values, that all the values inside your programmer are the same for your effect. So if I was to redo this, I'm going to go ahead and close this out, hit undo to undo my record, but keep my offset at 0 degrees. Then we can record this as a global palette. So when I hit record, global, I'm going to choose intensity and effects. And we're going to record this here again. Now it should be recorded as not a global palette. That should have stored as a global palette. 1 second, guys. Record global. Okay, so everything is unique. Everything is the same. There's no unique values. Record, choose, open. I am stumped. I have stumped myself. That should have done global. Paul, did you see anything that I did wrong in that?
Just are you able to apply that effect that you just recorded to just another set of fixtures?
Oh, maybe it's recording now. 101, enter. No. Not the one I just recorded. Someone is saying that you think you can only do it when a single fixture is selected. I will have to make note because, again, that was one of those things that I did test and for some reason did not work. I mean, it's not working now. global
just
effect.
did it with a single fixture. Yep.
Okay. In theory, we should be able to do it with all the fixtures selected, though, not just one. So for right now, to make a global effect, you'll need to select one fixture. So I'm just going to do it to that one solo spot that we have, to that one solo spot right there at the end. Apply my intensity effect. With the sine wave. So now it's going up and it's going down. Then we can record that global intensity effects. And now if we open that guy up, it should be as global. So if you're trying to record a global effect, just make sure you're doing it with one fixture, and then you can apply that to multiple. Any questions about palettes, guys?
Paul asked, can you record a directory with only a spread or offset to use?
I've never tried. That doesn't mean we can't try it right now.
Well, see, I think the spread affects the offset, so I think they're interconnected.
Yeah, so your spread is just directly changing your offset. So if you only wanted your offset, I don't think we can apply just an offset without that. So, I've never tried it, so I can't say for sure. I'm just going to try to knock out some values. So what if I search track instead? Awesome. So as soon as you get rid of an effect on the parameter, then the offset goes away. The offset is just directly changing whatever value that exactly is. I mean, it's just changing where on that specific effect cycle. So that, in my mind, makes sense why that does not work. So no, to Paul's question directly, no, you cannot change. You cannot have a palette that just has offset or spread it's stored in there.
What would be the most efficient way to update an effect palette?
Just like every other palette, if it's not a global palette, so if it's just a per fixture palette, then we can just open the palette and change it that way. So with this guy open, we can actually see in our table, we have our sign. If we wanted to change our offset, I'm going to check my blind off and fan my offset. And let's say we wanted to go a little bit faster. So just open the palette and then hit update, and that'll update the palette. So then if we apply that palette now, it helps if I have fixtures selected. There we go. And now it's applying that update that we just made. So palettes so if you're trying to do a per fixture palette, just opening the palette, changing it that way is really quick to change it, to update it. If you're trying to affect a global palette, to update a global palette, the easiest way to update a global palette is you get the information in the programmer as you need it, and then re-record over that palette and either replace or merge the new information in. Any other palette questions? Oh, I see one in here. What's the purpose of having all those programmers open? The purpose for this was to show you guys the different parameter values that you could see with an effect. So if I was to change this to a different wave, you'll start to see them all change. The main thing was for me to show you that each fixture has its own unique effect value. So you can actually see that you can go in and change exactly what each fixture is doing. You don't have to do it globally from the effect engine if you didn't want to. Usually this is not a view that I use for programming. I would use something similar to this view and then get the effect engine and the effect editor open.
Megan, do you see the question from Alan just right before that one? If you have a chase set for 8 fixtures, but the next night you have 14 fixtures, is there a way can you recommend a way to best adjust that so the effect looks smooth?
So the effect looks smooth. I would probably recommend, if you don't have those 14 fixtures already in your show file, then you can use in the fixture window. Fixture window, there is the replicate fixture button here up at the top. That's going to replicate whatever fixture you have selected, and that includes all programming information. So you want to select the fixtures to replicate the fixtures that are most likely to have that programming in common. So if you are able to kind of shift around where they are, so like if I know I'm adding an extra 2 lights, for example, here, so I now have 11 solo spots, I'll probably clone 1 on the left and then clone 1 on the right. Or replicate 1 on the left and then 1 on the right. That way those fixtures that effect is still applied in a little bit more of an even way. If that makes sense. And then Paul, if you have any other suggestions too.
No, that's probably what I would have done. Is I would have replicated fixtures and then went ahead and went back into and then edited the effect from there.
Yeah, I don't think there's like an easy, quick way without doing some adjustments to that. Some people also if some people for intensity effects, what they usually do, or what I've seen started to get going more, is pixel mapping. Is they will have they take one of the media that we have that's just like a white bar and they move it across at the speed that they want. And then they can just arrange the fixtures however they want inside that plot, inside that pixel map. We're going to talk about, there's going to be a whole nother video on pixel mapping. It's just an easy way in that case to get an intensity effect. And that way, if you add fixtures in, you can actually space them out exactly how you want. And they can be a bit smoother to edit sometimes. And I'll be honest, with most of my intensity effects, if I'm trying to do a specific chase, like from one way to another, like from one side to another, I actually end up using a Q-only cue list that I turn, Q-only cue list that I turn into a chase. That way I can just have the timing exactly how I want it, rather than mess around with the effect engine. Great. With that being said, let's talk a little bit about recording some effects into the next cue, or into a cue also. That way, because recording effects into a cue is how you probably want to use effects most of the time. I want that guy open. And let's get an effect going. So I'm going to select my spot 2000s at full, and I'm going to put them in a circle effect. And I'm going to go ahead and tilt them down a little bit. So with the fixtures going, let's say we wanted to record this as Q1. So we're going to go ahead and just hit record, and then press choose on fader 9, for example. And that gets us a Q1 here. So now if we wanted to, in the next cue, stop the effect, all we have to do, I'm going to go ahead and clear out my programmer. And we're going to go this effect, or go this cue. And tilt them down again. And we're going to actually update the cue again. Programmer update. Okay, great. So now it's updated. Now it's going. Great. So now in the next cue, if I want this effect to stop, we can just apply a new parameter where we want it to go. So instead of it stopping down there, I want to stop like right above the. I want to stop right above the audience. So I'm going to go ahead and just apply the new position where I want it to land, and then record that as the next cue. So record choose again, records it as the next cue. So now if I clear out my programmer, and then we hit go again on that fader, it's going to stop the effect and just apply it to the, and just kill the effect and go to that new position that we want. So it's really easy to get an effect to stop, especially whenever it's coming from playback. Just assigning a new parameter will get the effect to stop. Now, so then there's also this option called pile add effects, where if you didn't want the effect to stop, then you can turn on pile add effects, and then the effect kind of just carries on from that new base value. So I'm actually going to go to the next page that I have set up here to kind of show that a bit more. So we have our lights on. I'm going to go the effect cue list here so that we can just show a bit more of how this happens if it's broken up over different cue lists, for example. And then I'm going to go this position look that I have. And we'll see that the effect just stops from the position look. So what we want to actually happen here is this effect to keep going. So what we can do is open the preferences, open the cue list options, and this also exists for scenes. But you double tap choose, open the cue list window, go to options here, change your cue list, the pile add effects. If you choose that option, then after we go an effect, when we go the new position, it won't stop. It'll be based off of that new effect. It'll be based off that effect will be based off that new base value. So I have the effect that's just going, and now if I just go that cue list that we were going on, the effect's now going off that new base value, so that new position. So that pile add effects allows us to just say, hey, the new base value is going to come from a different source. It's going to come from here. We don't need to actually kill the effect this time, even though that's what was recorded inside the programming. Any questions, guys, about using pile add effects?
Seeing any in the Q&A, I think we're caught up there.
Great.
I think we're getting a couple of no's and nopes here. So
awesome, great. With that being said, with pile add effects, let's go into a little bit more of like the in shot and the bounce and like direction type options here. I'm going to go ahead and release my effects, or release my cue list here. Oh, and then we're going to go into actually doing some programming stuff. Okay. So with pile add effect, so we're going to talk about InShot a bit. So what InShot allows us to do, and we can see that InShot's here in our effect engine itself, is your InShot is going to say how many times are we going to run this effect. So by default, the InShot is just a dash. So if I was to hit my spot 2000s, and I'm going to go ahead and just put them in a circle effect and turn them on. And make them a bit bigger. Okay, so right now my end shot for these fixtures are just a dash. This dash says that this effect is going to last forever, so it's just going to run indefinitely. So now if you wanted this effect to run a specific amount of time, so let's say we wanted it to run once, that's when we're going to click and drag on these cells, press set, and then we can type in how many times we want it to run. I'm just going to say 1 for right now, and hit enter. And now the end shot has been applied. So that means we're going to just run the effect 1 time. You're not going to see it being applied until we actually get it recorded into a cue list or into a scene. So I'm going to hit record and press choose on fader number 8 so it's recorded in. And then we're going to make sure that fader's up. We're going to hit go. So what we'll see is that effect is only going to run once, and then it's just going to stop. So the end shot is telling us, hey, only run that effect once, and then we're just going to stop and go back to whatever the base value position was. We can adjust that end shot. Maybe you want it to go like 3 times. You can always go in to that cue, just like you were to edit it. Hold down open, click on the cue number, or you could hit list 19 cue 1 open. Either way, and then go into end shot tab. And in your end shot tab, you can change how many times you want to run. So this time I'm going to say 5, and then hit update. And now when it runs for this time again, it's going to run 5 times, and then after it runs 5 times, it'll be done.
Hey, Megan. Is there a possibility to run for a specific time?
I don't think you can do that in the effect engine.
Yes, I don't think you can either.
In the effect engine, I would say no. You could trick it with a follow cue and so like in Q1, and then I could say in Q2, just record is a new position, whatever I want whatever that base value is, and make sure that your table's set to off, and then set the wait time to be however long you want it to be.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would do.
Yeah. That would be one way to get it only running for a specific time. Whereas end shot's just how many times do you want the effect cycle to actually run, instead of it's just how many times. If you want it to run for infinite amount of times, you can change this guy back from 5, that hidden dash, and it'll go back to dash. And now this effect is just going to run forever until the list gets released. I'm going to release it so it stops. And that's end shot. So with end shot, right next to end shot, we also have this bounce option. So the bounce is going to say we're going to run the effect in one direction, run the effect cycle in one direction. Then once we hit the end of that effect cycle, we're going to reverse it. So I'm going to do the intensity that we had, that intensity effect that we had recorded before. Man, having effect palettes makes this a lot quicker. All right, and I'm going to tilt them downstage, that way you guys can see. Great. So now we have that intensity effect. Now in the effect engine, I'm going to open it back up, and right now our bounce is set to off. It was set to off, and now I set it to on. And what we'll see is it's going from left to right and then right to left. And it's just based on how that effect cycle is actually going. So this is one way if you wanted lights to kind of chase each other one way and then come back. This is one way you can do that. I'm going to go ahead and turn off bounce. And then you also have the direction option in here, and that is forward. So forward is just in your selection order. So I hit 1 through 9, and that's why it's going from house left to house right. Then I can change this to be backwards, or reverse, where it's going to go from house right to house left. So it's just a quick and easy way to change which way your effect is actually running. I'm doing this with all intensity effects, or I did it with that one position effect. That can also apply to colors as well, if we wanted to. And then this last column here is the sync column that I want to talk about. Your sync, and this is a relatively new feature. Your sync column is saying where do these exist? How do we line up this existing effect? With function and fixture selected, it means that it's synced basically to this one fixture. So if we're just talking about Spot 2001, so whatever effects are running on this one fixture, and then to the same function, so for intensity. So that really means it's just unique to itself. So if we were to record this into a queue and then play another queue with an intensity effect, it wouldn't line up necessarily. So let's run through an example as to why a different queue list as to why you would use an effect sync option. So I'm going to hit Spot 2000s, 100 again. I'm going to put them in a circle effect and tilt them downstage. And we're going to make that size just a bit bigger again. Okay, so we have our effect going. I'm going to select only the evens for Q1. So I'm going to hit select even and grab only the evens. And then I'm going to record this onto fader 10. So I'm going to hit record and then choose on fader 10. Now I'm going to select the opposite. Oh, I skipped a step from that. So hit record. And actually, to only record the evens, I need to make sure I hit the selected button. And now I'm going to record that to fader 10. And then I'm going to select invert to get the odds, hit record, selected, and choose again on fader 10. So now if I go that queue, we only have the evens going. And now if I go the queue again, you'll notice that they don't line up correctly. Like the fixture, the effects are not running in sync. But in the programmer, I had them running at the same time. So a point that you might use your sync is that when you introduce like the same effect but later on in the queue list, then you can have the fixtures come back and be at the same point in that effect cycle. So we're going to open Q2 and change that effect sync option. I'm going to choose sync up here. And I'm just going to select all of the fixtures and hit set. And I'm going to change it just to function. And then update. So now what you see is when I release this queue list, and I go Q1 only, we're going the evens, and we hit go again. The odds just catch up and go exactly into that same effect cycle. So that is because I set the sync to function. And by setting that sync to function in Q2, by setting the sync to function in Q2, it's just saying, hey, find any effect in this queue list that is currently running on the pan and the tilt. And once we find that pan and tilt effect, then make these fixtures start the effects at the same point that those are currently at right now. If I change this just to fixture, though, we'll see insert, uncheck, check, update. I'm not hitting enter. Fixture, function. There we go. So after you select fixture and hit enter, then you update. Now if we go to the queue, then if we go again, they're not directly in sync now because they're on a fixture basis. So so fixture number 1 wants to sync to all the effects running on fixture number 1, not on fixture number 2, for example. Now if we were to open this again, there's another option in here. where we can say, hey, listen for everything that's currently playing in the list or scene. So we have Q1 going. And then what list or scene said is if there's any effect currently playing in this list or in the scene, then we're going to sync up to that effect. We're not going to, it doesn't matter the function or if it's a fixture, just whatever specifically is going on in this one list, that's what the fixtures are going to sync up to. So in here, there's also another option for global or global 1 or global 2. So that just says, I want to sync to any effect that's currently going. So if you have a bunch of effects that are just on different scenes, that might be a good option. That way your position, your pan and your tilt effects can sync up together and run the same way. Any questions about effect in shot, bounce, direction, or sync?
Is there a way to crossfade an effect? So basically using similar syntax to how you might apply a fade into a color or a position.
Can you rephrase? I'm sorry, I don't understand completely.
So if you wanted to do like a fade live in the programmer with fade changes, and you wanted to basically, you know, manually enter a time for position or color change, is there a way to basically start, you know, have an effect fade in 2 seconds? So like how you would do color time 2 seconds enter. Are you able to apply something similar to an effect in the programmer?
Let's try it real quick. Now I get, like, just apply fade timing to the effect itself. Correct. Like we would anything else. Apply effect 1. So we have this going. Great. Then we're going to do effect time 5 enter, which do not affect. Okay. So it looks like it doesn't work doing effect time 5 to only apply timing to the effect itself.
I don't think that is. I don't think that's a possibility either.
Yeah, I remember this question actually being asked in a class, and we tried it, and it was the same results. So, and I don't remember the exact reason I got behind it. But I did report it to engineering. I did report it to our development team, and I'll bring it up again also, just to find out if I can find out why exactly that effect timing doesn't work. Cool. And that has been written down for me to take note of later. You should still be able to, though, in here, insert 5. So you can still change your effect timing, either in the programmer under the effect fade tab, or in the fade, or in the effect engine, just changing your effect fade timing here as well.
I mean, I see in the programmer fade changes is not enabled.
No, I didn't.
Maybe you can't do it via the command line, but maybe you can input it via the effect fade.
Yeah, let me blind and unblind them now. That fade changes is enabled. It looks like it's fading in. It's not as drastic. It's not. Yeah, it took some time to get in there to get that effect in there. So if fade changes is enabled and you change your effect fade time, then you can ease in your effects. It's just a timing value, just like every other timing value is. So one other thing I wanted to show before we open it up to just Q&A type session is I wanted to talk about palette-to-palette effects.
Just one quick
yeah,
thing, right
yeah,
before
go for it.
before we move on back to InShot. There
Okay.
used to be a weird issue when you would use one InShot on a bump button, and it would not start on the proper fixture, or it would move past the final instrument selection at the end. I was told just to use a fan delay for a wipe and not worry about InShot. Is this still the case in this version of software?
I don't know if that specific issue has been fixed. I can definitely try it and we can see, but I don't know if that specific issue has been fixed. InShot 1. I'm going to clear off the faders. So my InShots 1, I'm going to record this onto fader number 8. So if I set my flash keys, go on flash, release on off.
My guess is
I think that's all I need to do.
Yeah, my guess is this is probably not going to work as that question is stated, simply because the go and the release is based on the action of the bump button. So if it's in fact released, it would be in a release state. I would not expect it to complete the InShot if the bump button was released.
Yeah, I also wouldn't. I mean, of course, I held down the bump button then, but let me make sure my effect. So I have my fade time set to 0. And I'm going to change my release time also to 0 instead of 2 seconds. That way it doesn't fade out. So if I hold my bump, I let go. I mean, I can definitely, if I just hold my bump, I can definitely, oh, it's completing the InShot and then it's done. So that effect cycle starts kind of in the middle, I think. Yeah. I mean, it looks like to me InShot is only completing once. This is kind of why I also lean towards programming my chases into queues and queueless, because then I don't have to mess around with the effect engine, to be honest. It's easy enough for me to say 1 at full record, enter, 2 at full record, enter, 3 at full record, enter, and then change my option to be a queue only, queueless. Or to just span my delay time. So 1 through 9 at full, time, 0 through 8, enter, time, 0, enter, and then record that as a queueless. All right. Anything else, Paul, before we get going?
Is there or will there ever be a way to globally see what cues are using a specific effect palette?
In the, oh, that's just gonna say what cue list they're coming from, I believe. I don't think it says what, because you can always change your output to sources. So I'm just gonna select those guys at 100%. I'm just gonna put them in an effect. Great. Record that here. So they're going. So once you're in sources, you can see where the information's coming from, but you don't see the specific palette. Well, yeah, you won't see the specific palettes because we don't have that information. So right now, there's not a way to do that. That is a great request and should go onto our forums, forums.highend.com.
Would a report? Could you see that? Could you possibly run that in a report? I'm not sure about the limitations of the reporting function.
You might be able to run that in a report. That's in a list. That's in all the lists, and then you can find and in effect palette. Oh, what I know, I think I used one. Not exist in multiple locations at the same time. So if I delete that, effect palette. So that's just directory effect. You know what? I will have to see about this in another. I will have to look into that because I don't do referencing effect palette. One. What if I run that now? So yes, you can. Good call, Paul, using reports. In reporting, you can always open it, hit is referencing, and then choose which effect palette you want. Is referencing effects palette, choose which effect palette you have, and they'll start to be populated in here. And then you hit run, and it'll figure out what cues and what fixtures are using that specific effect. You can also do that for any type of palette, and then effects can get pretty powerful because you can also say what fixture. So find any programming that works for the SolidFrame 1000s. And it's going to bring up all the cues and lists and positions and scenes and all that good stuff for the SolidFrame 1000. So it's a pretty decent way for you to inspect what exactly your show file is doing. All right, with that being said, let me jump to doing how to do effect to effect palettes for you guys, because like I said, they're pretty useful, especially if you're trying to get, I like to use them for specific colors. So if I want to do like a red to green chase or a red to blue chase type deal. So inside the color directory, and I'm going to switch up views here a little bit so that we can see this. That's a little bit better here. All right, so this is a very command line centered. You have to make sure your command line is following the right thing. So if I wanted my SolidSpot 2000s to go from cyan to red, an easy way to apply this is so you're going to select the group of lights that you want it to go to, that you want it to be applied to. So I'm going to select my Spot 2000s. And then we're going to hit the Effect button. Effect at. So once you hit at, then you have to specify what palette do you want it to go to specifically, starting at. So I'm going to say color 32, and then you say through. So color 32 is my cyan, and then I'm going to say through, what is my next color that I want it to go through? So I'm going to say red. So that's going to be color 35. So I'm going to hit color 35 and then enter. And so now the console has calculated an effect for me that goes from cyan to red. And we can see it inside the visualizer that they're going from cyan to red. Now, once that's done, you can then go and adjust it just like we have been. So it's a smooth chase right now. If we wanted that to go from cyan to be a step, we can. We can just click and drag on those cells, hit set, press step, and then increase our rate, and they can go faster now if we wanted to. Rate. And now they're just going a bit faster. You can then fan your offset once it's going also and start getting those colors to chase each other. So the syntax is effect at the first palette through the second palette. It doesn't necessarily have to be color palettes. It can also be position palettes if you wanted to go between two different positions, or different intensity palettes also. So if you wanted to go through a couple different, if you wanted to go through two different intensities, you could do that as well this way. So I'll just show again on the RGB LEDs here. I'm going to hit RGB LEDs at 100% in the back. Effect at, and then it's the first color. So let's say magenta through the second color. Enter. So now these lights are going to go from magenta to blue. And they'll just cycle through that. It's just saying, hey, we're going to chase from the first value to the second value. So even though there's palettes in between magenta and blue, we're not going to hit those palettes. We're going to stay, we're just going to go from magenta to the blue color itself. Also, doing an effect palette like this, so palette through palette effect, it does not reference the palettes. So if you update if we were to update that blue to be a little bit brighter, then you would have to remake this effect because it doesn't take those changes that are inside the palette. So it's just a nice, easy shortcut to get some nice chases back and forth between two specific values.
Maegan, is there any talk? I mean, obviously this, this kind of gets a little bit beyond the scope of training, but is there any talk of that being changed in the future?
I know it's been requested. I will poke the bears again and say it's been requested again. I would like to see it change because it makes sense that if you're using palettes, it should reference those palettes rather than being hard values that are taken at face.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just don't know if it's actually being changed or not, or I don't know. I know it's been requested. I know it's been seen. That is what I have planned for effects. So if there are questions, we have about 15 minutes until we're supposed to be done with it for today. So this is our Q&A time.
Is there a way to get effect keywords such as size into the programmer for the purposes of writing macros?
There is not. There's not a way to get like effect size onto the command line itself. So there's not a way to get size or effect or offset, or size, table, offset into the command line. I have a follow-up question to that. What are you trying to use macros to do at that point? I know we have to wait for that response, but I'm just not much of a macro person.
Are there thoughts of implementing segments, buddying, fanning into effects?
You definitely can. So I've done fanning. I've done a lot of fanning. So if we just pay attention to this RGB effect going in the back, we can actually fan out that offset at the same time. So I'm going to hold down fan, spin that offset wheel, and we'll start to see those colors chase each other, which is kind of nifty. Now we have that chase following each other. You can also, at the same time, use segments and budding if you want to. So if you go to segments, so if I wanted this fixture, if I wanted every, let's say the effect to only happen within the bars. So I'm going to say it's with a segment of 8 because there's 8 cells in this bar. I can say segments of 8, and then I can fan my offset. And when I fan my offset now, It should only happen inside the bar. And I might be too slow. Yeah, so now you can fan now the set because of segmenting, it's just saying how many fixtures are we going to repeat that across. How many fixtures are we going to repeat across? So we can use so we're saying great, we're doing this effect 8 times across these fixtures, and then we're going to repeat it for the next 8 fixtures and the next 8 fixtures and the next 8 fixtures. A lot of these topics that we've talked about in previous, because I know we've talked about segments and budding in a previous video, or like fanning, how you can do a center fan, that still applies to effects. It's just effects are just a different type of parameter if you want to think of it that way. So like if I wanted to do an intensity effect that goes from in to out, we can. 50. And it's just based on how I'm actually fanning at that point, though. So we have our fixtures going in and out. And then if I hold down the fan button, we can see that I can choose a center fan, and then I can fan that effect offset. So when I fan that effect offset, we're actually fanning in and out. But of course, my segments and budding don't clear when I hit clear. So let me take that back to 0 degrees offset. Now, if I fan my offset, we'll start to see that in and out. So whenever you're trying to get chases to go a specific direction, that's probably when you want to start changing up your fanning options at the bottom of your screen, your normal, start, and center options, or changing how you're actually selecting your fixtures from left to right, right to left, even then odds, that kind of thing.
Can you explain the difference between begin and start?
So begin is the value that you want that effect cycle to actually begin on. So in this case, because I applied a 50% intensity and a 50% intensity effect, we want that effect to begin at 0% and then end at 100%. Whereas start is where on that effect cycle is the fixture actually going to start that effect cycle. So what value does that fixture actually start at? If that makes sense. We can see that a little bit better with a programmer window. So I can change this to start here, and then this to begin. So this is where the effect is actually going to be. So where the effect cycle for that fixture is actually going to begin. So this for fixture numbers 1 and 9 begin at 100%, and then but what value do they actually start at? What is the actual program value that they start at? Well, they're going to start at 99%. So hopefully that helps with the on and off.
Do you know of any good examples of using a mark on effect versus a mark off effect?
It depends on how you want the base value to go. So inside the manual, it actually shows pretty decent picture of how all the effects should be. I actually should have just had these as already ready to go. Pass effects, table effects. So it honestly just kind of depends on so like if you're thinking of an intensity effect, do you want the intensity to stay on longer than it's off? If so, then you want a mark on effect. If you want the intensity to stay off longer than it's on, then you want to mark off effect. I don't have it. I mainly use them for intensity effects, just to turn them on and turn them off. And so I don't really have any good examples unless Paul does.
I do not.
Okay. Or if anyone has good examples, you could also toss those into the chat as to why when you would use a mark on or a mark off effect. Oh, I have play changes still on the programmer. That would be the issue. That is also why they're taking a little bit longer to respond.
Best way to make a chase with only one light on at a time.
Am I limited to only using the effect engine? If I am, then that's...
No, you are not limited to only using the effect engine.
Cool. Then my easiest way would be to do a... I have my fixtures on, 100%. If I just go to value here, great, they're on at 100%. I can then delay my time, so I can hit time, 0 through 8, enter, record that to a fader, say at 0 now, and record that there, clearing that out. Now if I go that cue list, I get one at a time. And then if I go it again, it's going to take one out at a time. I could then, if I really wanted to speed that up or slow it down, make my fader, instead of an intensity fader, a playback rate scaler. And now, if it's too fast or too slow, I can speed up, and it's going to go faster. Or I can slow it down. And once it's been made, we can then turn it into a chase. If I go into options, I can go to my cue list options and say, right here, there's a chase button. And now I hit go, and now they're chasing just like an effect would be. And then I can still use that fader to slow down if I wanted to. Or I could hold down choose on that fader. I don't know if this is going to work on the computer very well. And I can do a tap tempo. It's not going to work on the computer very well. Or you hold down choose and hit go at the same time. So then you can get the tempo right for these cues.
I do not have a console in front of me, but I might give it a go. If I were going to do this via an effect, with these 9 lights.
If you tell me what to do, I can do it.
I'll try. It's been a while. What I might do is basically select these lights and actually give them a 0% base value, so that when I do run a step effect, apply a step effect, basically the base value is 0%. Set the size of the step effect to 100%, so this basically goes from a base value of 0 to 100%. And then what I would probably do, depending on what direction, I might try and offset, maybe 0, fan the offset 0 through 180. I don't know if this is going to work.
Looks pretty good, Paul. I'd say you've got it pretty well. Theory, that should also work if you do a sign then as well. and then they fade on and they fade off.
Yeah.
And again, there's also another option of using your plots or pixel mapping for this as well. I know that Alan keeps asking because of touring situations. I know that's what I know that's what some tours do. Is they'll that way if they have to take lights out, all that kind of stuff, they can very easily just grab the lights they want and not apply those into that pixel map layer. We're going to talk about pixel mapping in another video also.
Yeah, Chris had a question about what about a workaround for slotted parameters? And I mean, I think this is going to be difficult, just be simply of the nature of a slotted parameter in terms of a wheel. I think if in terms of like a fixed color wheel, you could certainly try and utilize a palette to palette effect. So if you have palette 1 is fixed color 1, and palette 2 is fixed color 2, and running between those, but you're still going to see the wheels spin.
Mm-hmm.
You're still going to see the change.
Yeah, I mean that's just the case of that's just a case of physics at that point.
Unless the fixture has a blink mode. A lot of, I mean, some old legacy high-end fixtures used to have a blink mode, or would have a blink mode, where you could actually, it was a setting on the fixture that the fixture would basically dim out during the change of a slotted parameter. Not a lot of fixtures have that today.
Right. Would path help that? Path is really just the type of crossfade that the fixture is going to take, so I don't think path would actually help alleviate some of those seeing like the colors in between the color wheels type deal. It might help if you're just talking about going in a queue though, like if you're on Q1, they're in white, Q2, they're in color wheel red, then you could change your path for that specific color wheel from a start to an end, and then it doesn't change until the very last moment possible, and as fast as possible. So you don't see it at the beginning of your change. I don't know if that would help at all, depending on what you're trying to achieve. I think I was trying to see if we had any more of that macro stuff, because like someone had asked about the macros, and then I did the follow-up. Here it is. But I want to have several sizes, so I write macros to change the effect size in real time rather than having several different of the same effects just for multiple sizes. So I guess like I would see your want, Trevor, of having different macros for that. But then at that point, I'd also say, why not? You're still going to have to write multiple things. You could do Trevor, shoot me an email. Or just support@highend.com, and I have ideas that we'll talk about for that one. Oh, yes. So before we end, I actually did not talk about rate scalars whatsoever. And those are very important when you're dealing with effects or cues or scenes. I'm going to go to a different page real quick in here. Page 3, sorry, page 4. That's fine. I hit the wrong number, but that's fine. So I'm going to select our 1 through 9s. They're in our fixture number 1 and effect 1. And we're going to put positions. Change our position there. I actually meant to completely talk about how to change your speed inside a queue really quickly. So with this being said, I'm just going to record this into a list here on fader number 4. So you can, when you play back this list, there are different options you can do. I don't think I tried my picture selected. And we're just gonna update that. Great. So when you have your effect in a list, you can use your master control sets here to change your effect rate, your effect size really quickly. You would click on so you'd hold down that master, so Alt-4, and then you can choose on effect rate. And now your fader is actually controlling how fast or how slow that's going. So super fast or slow it down. We can also then just move that list again. So list 24, move, and we'll just put it right next to it, list 25. And we can choose effect size at this point. And now you can use that second fader to actually control the size of that effect. So now you can control one fader for your effect size and then one for your effect rate if you wanted to by just using master control sets. So we briefly talked about that a little bit yesterday in the last video. So when you hold down choose on a fader, you get these different options to go between: standard, intensity, playback rate, effect size. So effect rate allows me to control effect rate on the fader, and it also maps the buttons to be a little bit different, and same with effect size. And you can go and customize exactly what those do in your cue list options under effect rate or effect size, depending on which one you have. So right now it's just play would double the effect rate, pause would set it back to 1x, and then back would make it slower, divide it by half. And then what's also nifty is changing your upper bounds so that if you just, because 16 times your effect rate is super fast, so you could set it to 4x. So now as high as it goes is never higher than 4x the speed. So it's still pretty fast, but it's not 16 times fast. Great. Any other questions, guys, before we call it done and we start talking about what's next?
No, I'm not seeing any new in the Q&A.
Cool.
We're pretty much caught up. There was a question about batches, which I do believe is the next week's
Let's see.
topic.
Yeah, so here's the videos we have coming up next. And yeah, batches is next, and then the week after that we get to plots. So if you have any questions over batches, like even like what is a batch, we are going to cover all of that next week. Great. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate y'all watching this one again. And it looks like we only have 4 left in this series. So thanks for watching all the others too. If you have any questions, feel free to always shoot us an email, support@highend.com, give us a call, or if you need to go back and rewatch this video over, you can also, remember, it'll be posted to YouTube on that study hall channel, ETC Study Hall's channel. So make sure to go and subscribe and then do whatever you do to the playlist for High End to get those notifications. And just give us a couple days to post them. Paul, anything else before we stop?
No, I think that's it. Appreciate it, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.